another topic here, dealing with bias and credibility. An author's discussion of a topic is very rarely is it neutral. It will contain some opinion and it will contain some bias because, let's face it, as human beings, we're all going to have certain biases towards certain things. Right? We're all going to have certain opinions on certain things. So a person's opinions and beliefs can influence their perspective on an issue or event, both knowingly and unknowingly. So although bias means favor, here's one thing to note. Bias can mean favor, but the author may show either a favorable or unfavorable bias. So there may be examples where bias can go for something or against something. Credibility is the quality of being trustworthy or believable. So it's important to determine how believable the author is when evaluating claims, opinions, evidence, and other parts of a passage. So when you're reading a passage, consider bias, consider credibility by asking yourself a few things. What experience does the author have with the events, the people, the topic? Like, does the author already have some sort of background with the topic? No. How does the author feel about the events or the people or the topic? Does the author's background reveal a preference for a particular outcome or group? What positive or negative language does the author use to describe people, events, or issues? And what evidence, if any, does the author provide to support the central idea? So a lot of questions to ask yourself to consider the credibility of a source. Now, you have bias, and then you've got propaganda. Propaganda is an extreme form of bias that is designed to convince others to act and think as the author wants them to think. So his bias is more like the author is inclined towards a certain position. Propaganda is a type of bias where they're actually trying to actively influence somebody or some group of people to think the way the author is thinking. So propaganda intentionally focuses on certain facts while ignoring others. So you see here, these are some very old school examples of propaganda. For instance, that first poster there says, "Smoking stacks attract attacks. Don't invite disaster." Notice again, we have very strong wording in propaganda because, again, it's a form of bias that's trying to get you sometimes to scare you or sometimes to convince you very strongly about a particular position. Or in that second propaganda poster, "Food is a weapon. Don't waste it." Given there. So one of the things you want to consider when you're seeing these propaganda examples is first the emotionally charged language, and then secondly, also consider what the source is. So for instance, in that second example, the National Wartime Nutrition Program is giving this poster about saying food is a weapon. Well, they probably have their own reasons why they want people not to waste food. So again, pay attention to the source so it gives you a little bit more of a perspective about why they're using that propaganda. So let's continue on in this passage that we saw earlier about the Declaration of Sentiments. The next paragraph goes something like this. The women's rights movement in the United States gained strength with the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention. The defining document of this gathering was the Declaration of Sentiments, which was patterned after the Declaration of Independence, but focused on the fact that women lack basic freedoms that men enjoy. Ooh, stop right here. Notice they bring up this big thing here about the Declaration of Sentiments, similar to the Declaration of Independence, but really focusing on this idea that women aren't the same as men. Women don't have the same freedoms that men have. The revolutionary nature of the Seneca Falls Convention was apparent in the public's response to the event. One newspaper described Seneca Falls as, quote, "the most shocking and unnatural event ever recorded in the history of humanity." So we see here that this is all about the Seneca Falls Convention, the Declaration of Sentiments, and there is some public opposition. Certainly this one newspaper would definitely be considered public opposition. So now let's take a look at a question here. Pause the video, take about a minute to try this one on your own, and when you have an answer, unpause the video, and we'll go over this one together. All right, let's take a look at question number 3 here. Which of the following states the main idea of the passage? So what is the main idea of this passage? Well, we see it right at the beginning, right? The women's rights movement in the United States gained strength with the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention, and then it goes on from there about what they did in the Seneca Falls Convention. If you had answer choice A, that is indeed your correct answer. The Seneca Falls Convention was important in the fight for women's rights. Now, some of those other statements may be factually true, but they don't encompass the main idea of the passage. Those other answer choices are maybe a little bit too specific to individual points. But we want the broad main idea, which is saying, hey, the Seneca Falls Convention was super important for women to have equal rights. All right, and then let's take a look at question number 4. Again, pause the video, take about a minute to try this one on your own, and then when you have an answer, unpause the video, and again, we'll go over this together. Okay, let's take a look at question number 4. Which of the following statements based on the passage is an opinion rather than a fact? So here's the thing. We don't want the fact. We want the opinion answer choice. So let's go through these one by one. If you take a look at answer choice, A, the Seneca Falls Convention helped the women's rights movement gain strength. Well, is that an opinion or a fact? It's given as a fact right at the very beginning, right? The women's rights movement gained strength. We can certainly get rid of that. But then take a look at choice B. The Seneca Falls Convention was a shocking and unnatural event that undermined the nature of women. Wait a minute. Notice even there some of the strong language that's being given there. Is this a factually true statement? Did it undermine the nature of women? Well, here's where we could be misled. Because we do see a similar sentence towards the very end. One newspaper. Wait a minute. Is one newspaper going to give a fact? No, if it said all the newspapers or all the people who reported said this, then maybe that would be more of a fact. But since we only have one newspaper saying that this was a shocking and unnatural event that undermined the nature of women, this is more of an opinion rather than a fact. Answer choice B is going to be your correct answer. And all those other answer choices, if you notice, are given as facts. We see that the Declaration of Sentiments was modeled on the Declaration of Independence. We also saw the Declaration of Sentiments describe how women's rights were limited. Those are both factual statements. Choice B is the answer because that's the only answer choice that brings up an opinion.